My name is David Reyes, and for the past 4 years, I've worked as a cemetery groundskeeper at Hillcrest Memorial Gardens. It's a job most people find creepy, but honestly, I've always found it peaceful. The dead don't judge you, don't make demands, don't complain about your work. At least, that's what I used to think. I work the night shift twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. My job is simple: prepare graves for the next day's burials, maintain the grounds, and make sure nobody vandalizes the place. The pay is decent, and I get a lot of overtime. Plus, I'm a night owl anyway, so the hours work for me. Hillcrest is a massive cemetery, about 60 acres. It's been around since the 1920s, so there are sections with graves so old the headstones are barely readable anymore. The newer sections are in the back, closer to the maintenance building where I spend most of my shift. This all started 3 weeks ago on a Thursday night. I clocked in at 10 p.m. like usual. My supervisor, Glenn, was just finishing up his day shift. He handed me the work orders for the night: 3 graves to dig in Section G for Friday's funerals. Pretty standard. "Got your work cut out for you tonight," Glenn said, putting on his jacket. "Weather's supposed to get nasty around midnight. Try to get those graves done before the rain hits." I nodded and watched him drive off. Then I grabbed my gear, the excavator keys, my flashlight, clipboard with the work orders, and headed out to Section G. The first grave was for a woman named Dorothy Brennan, 87 years old, plot G42. I found the plot easily enough. It was marked with a small flag from earlier that day. I fired up the mini excavator and got to work. Takes about an hour to dig a proper grave, 6 feet deep, precise measurements. It's almost meditative in a weird way. I finished Dorothy's grave around 11:15 p.m. and moved on to the second one. Michael Patterson, 62 years old, plot G47. Another straightforward dig. The wind was picking up and I could smell rain in the air. Glenn was right about the weather. By 12:30 a.m., I'd finished both graves and was heading back to get the excavator ready for the third one when my phone buzzed. It was an email from the cemetery's administrative system. Subject line: urgent, additional work order. I opened it. Another grave to dig tonight. Plot G51. Name: David Reyes. Service time: 10 a.m. Friday. My name. I read it 3 times, my full name. My birth date was listed correctly too, March 14th, 1989. But the death date showed yesterday's date, Wednesday, November 8th. My hands started shaking. This had to be a mistake, maybe someone's idea of a sick joke. I called Glenn immediately, straight to voicemail. I tried the administrative office, no answer. Of course not, it was almost 1 a.m. I looked back at the email. It had come from the cemetery's official system, the same one that sends all our work orders. The formatting was identical to every other work order I'd ever received. Plot number, deceased name, service time, family contact information, everything. The family contact listed was my mother's phone number. I felt sick. I sat down on the excavator and tried to think rationally. Obviously, this was an error, some kind of database glitch. But how did it get my mother's number? How did it know my exact birth date? I decided to drive over to plot G51, just to prove to myself this was nonsense. When I got there, I nearly crashed the excavator into a headstone. The grave was already dug, 6 feet deep, perfectly rectangular, fresh dirt piled neatly beside it. And at the head of the plot, someone had placed a temporary marker, the kind we use before the actual headstone arrives. It had my name on it, David Reyes, my birth date, and yesterday's death date. I jumped off the excavator and backed away from the grave. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. Nobody else was scheduled to work tonight. I was alone. I'd been alone since Glenn left at 10 p.m. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 1:17 a.m. Then I noticed I had another email. Same subject line. Urgent. Additional work order. This one was for a grave in Section M. The name? Glenn Hoffer, my supervisor. Service time, 2 p.m. Friday. Death date? Today's date, Thursday, November 9th. My phone buzzed again. Another email, another work order. Jennifer Pratt, that's one of the administrative staff who works in the office. Section K. Service time? Saturday. Death date? Friday, November 10th. I started getting emails every few seconds. More names. Some I recognized. Other cemetery staff. Frequent visitors. People from town. Some I didn't know at all. All with death dates within the next week. All with work orders to dig their graves tonight. My phone was vibrating constantly now. I turned it off and threw it in the excavator. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I needed to get out of here, go home, and figure this out in the morning when rational people were awake. I drove the excavator back toward the maintenance building, but when I got close, I saw something that made me slam on the brakes. There were lights on in Section M, the section from Glenn's work order. Vehicle lights. Someone was there. I pulled up alongside and shouted over the engine noise. "Hey! Who authorized you to be here?" The figure operating the excavator turned to look at me. It was Glenn, my supervisor, the one who'd left at 10 p.m., the one whose name was on the work order. But something was wrong with him. His movements were stiff, mechanical. His face was blank, no expression at all. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned back to his work and continued digging. "Glenn, what the hell are you doing?" I climbed off my excavator and walked toward him. "Glenn, answer me!" He didn't respond, just kept digging. I walked around to see the plot marker. Glenn Hoffer. Today's date. That's when I heard another excavator start up. Then another. I turned and saw lights coming on all across the cemetery. Section G, Section K, Section D, Section M. Excavators running, all of them, digging graves. I ran toward the maintenance building. I had to call someone, anyone, the police, an ambulance, I didn't know, but I had to get help. As I ran past Section G, I glanced at the graves I'd dug earlier. Dorothy Brennan's grave was empty. Michael Patterson's grave was empty. But my grave, plot G51, wasn't empty anymore. There was someone lying in it, face up. I couldn't see clearly from the path, but something made me stop. Something made me walk closer. I knew I shouldn't. Every instinct screamed at me to keep running. But I walked to the edge of the grave and looked down. It was me. I was lying in my own grave. Eyes closed, hands folded across my chest, dressed in the exact clothes I was wearing right now. My work uniform, my boots, even the tear in my left sleeve from last week when I caught it on a fence. I stumbled backward and fell. When I looked up, the body in the grave was gone. The grave was empty again, just fresh-turned dirt and darkness. I ran to the maintenance building and locked myself inside. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. When the operator answered, I tried to explain what was happening, but I sounded insane even to myself. There are people digging graves, work orders for people who aren't dead yet. I saw myself in a grave. The operator told me to stay calm, that officers were on their way. I hung up and looked at the security monitors. I could see the excavators all across the cemetery, still running, still digging, but I couldn't see any operators. The machines were moving on their own. I turned on my phone. 57 new emails, all work orders, all death dates within the next month. I scrolled through the names and felt ice in my veins when I recognized one. Officer James Chen, Riverside Police Department. Death date, November 9th, 11:47 p.m. That was tonight. That was 20 minutes from now. I tried to call 911 again to warn them, but the line was busy. I tried again. Still busy. At 11:47 p.m., I heard sirens approaching. Through the window, I watched a police cruiser pull through the front gate. It was driving too fast, way too fast. The car skidded on the wet grass. It had started raining, and I watched in horror as it lost control and slammed into a massive oak tree in Section C. I ran outside, phone in hand, flashlight cutting through the rain. When I reached the cruiser, the airbags had deployed. The officer inside wasn't moving. I pulled open the door and checked his nameplate. Chen. Officer James Chen. I checked for a pulse. Nothing. He was gone. Dead. Just like the work order said. 11:47 p.m. I backed away from the car, rain soaking through my clothes. This was impossible. This couldn't be happening. I looked around the cemetery, at all the graves being dug, and finally understood. They were all going to die. Everyone on those work orders. And somehow I'd been given advance notice. I was digging graves for people who were still alive, but not for long. I got back in my truck, my personal vehicle, not the excavator, and drove straight to my mother's house. I didn't care that it was midnight. I banged on her door until she answered, confused and frightened. "You need to leave," I told her. "Pack a bag right now. We're leaving town. Both of us." "David, what are you talking about? It's the middle of the night." "Mom, please, trust me. We have to go. Now." I didn't tell her about the work order with my name on it. I didn't tell her that according to the cemetery system, I died yesterday. I just got her in my truck and drove. We drove until sunrise, until we'd put 200 miles between us and Hillcrest Memorial Gardens. That was 3 weeks ago. I never went back. I called Glenn the next day to quit, but his wife answered. She told me Glenn had died suddenly Thursday night. Heart attack while driving home from work. He'd crashed his car around 2 p.m. Friday. I checked the obituaries online. Jennifer Pratt, the administrative worker, died Friday in a house fire. I counted 17 names from those work orders in the obituaries over the next week. all of them died exactly when the system said they would. My mother and I are staying with her sister in Oregon now. I found work at a grocery store. I don't go near cemeteries anymore, and I deleted my email account, the one connected to Hillcrest's system. But here's the thing I can't stop thinking about. My work order said I died Wednesday, November 8th. Service time Friday, November 10th at 10 a.m. I wasn't there Friday. I didn't attend my own funeral. So technically, according to the system, I'm supposed to be dead. I'm living on borrowed time. And sometimes, late at night, I get this feeling like I forgot something important, like I left something unfinished. Last week, I had a dream. I was lying in a grave at Hillcrest, looking up at the sky. It was peaceful, quiet, and then I heard